How many hearts have you broken with those great big beautiful eyes? Those great big beautiful eyes that tell such beautiful lies.
How many times have you kissed somebody like you kissed me then? I don't.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and all ships at sea. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you an important message from the Prepared Mind Network.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. What a day, huh? It is Turds Day. You bet. It's actually Thursday. It's Thorsday. Did you know that several days of the week, or at least two that I know of, are named after Norse mythological people? That's right. Thorsday and Friday, named after the goddess of freedom, I believe. Enough mythology. Let's get down to facts. No, we don't have facts. We have SHTF. What's next? More SHTF, of course. Get this, folks. Goldman Sachs is quietly, well, according to a leak, letting everyone know, psst, times are tough. We're in an economic recession. And I thought, whoa, what was their first clue? Oh, my goodness. I hope you're fully prepared. Folks, a normal economic slowdown is hard enough. It's hard enough normally when, you know, there's just not as much construction going on, or there's not as much retail sales, or interest rates just aren't jiving with the amount of money people have to spend, you know, recession. Well, we've got this thing where it's kind of hard to find baby food. It's kind of hard to find gasoline under $4 a gallon. We're having some troubles, right? Oh, yeah, that's an understatement, and I was intentionally understating it. But yeah, Goldman Sachs is out there with their recession manual now, going to let people know what's coming. So I guess the best investments are to make our investments in ourselves. Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense, because this type of recession, folks, is more like evolutionary regression if we look at all the signs that are out there. Now, we do have some wacky stuff going on, wacky, and it's all because Joe, right? I think they put this clown, and I think we're all starting to see Joe as kind of a clown, a doofus. Certainly, all the European leaders have zero respect for him. He's over there making a fool of himself again, stumbling, bumbling, mumbling again. And it seems like what he has to say truly is a reflection of the administration's ability to, well, accurately discuss, describe, tell us what the hell is going on. Now, to make the point, today, the Energy Secretary for the United States government, she was in front of Congress, in front of the Senate. And I just say, someone, please, just someone other than, Biden, take responsibility, fix the problem, not give us worn and libtarded sound bites. So Senator Hawley asked the Energy Secretary, Granholm, whether she thought the rising price of gasoline was acceptable or not, to which she stated, it is not. And you can thank the activity of Vladimir Putin for invading Ukraine and pulling. And then Governor Hawley interrupted. When I say governor, I meant senator. He said, with all due respect, Madam Secretary, and I think he was being respectful because of all the people in the Biden administration. This one, even though she's a Democrat, I think she might actually know a little bit. It's too bad she can't actually stand up, take responsibility, and make the decisions to fix things. I think anyone who really wanted to fix things would realize we need the Keystone Pipeline. We need to do drilling in Alaska. We need more drilling in the Gulf. We need energy. And if you want to go green, You got to go and get the oil now while they're getting everything built, the infrastructure created to handle the green new economy. They're not even doing that. Anyways, Hawley said, with all due respect, Madam Secretary, that's utter nonsense. The average price of gas in my state was $2.07. 8 months later, long before Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, that price was up over 30% and has been going up consistently since. And I think there's some important words in there. Consistent. We are getting consistent clownery and buffoonery out of this administration. Consistent irresponsibility. Unbelievable. Now, I want to step on over to the war zone. This is a big deal, right? We all know it. You know it. I know it. Everyone knows it, right? The whole Ukraine-Russia thing. We've got a lot of really strange things happening right now. I want to get into all of it. First off, I want to discuss a false flag setup that's coming. We've got plenty of them. We have we had biological attack, we had chemical attack, we had nuclear weapon attack, we had nuclear power plant potential explosion in Ukraine, we had Russia's killing civilians. We had the Ukrainians are going to attack Russia on Russian soil. We had a lot of different false flag threats. Russia's going to start bombing other countries. Russia's going to start invading other countries. None of those played out, right? But now we have this one. It's like we know everything continually evolves. Everything continues to change, except the MO, the modus operandi. The United States government says it will not tolerate aggression against Sweden and Finland. This would be, by the way, Jake the Turd, Jake the Snake Solomon. He says, hey, Finland and Sweden have applied to join NATO, but aren't yet protected by it. Yeah. So Russia is going to attack them. Is that it? This is false flag. If something happens in Finland, folks, and I think Finland would be the one who would be hit and not Sweden. But both countries have applied to become NATO partners. This is interesting. See, they're kind of setting up. If something were to happen in Finland, they could say that Russia did it, that Putin did it, right? And they could say, oh, see, we need to increase funding. We need to increase a military presence in all NATO countries. We need to increase a total NATO military activity level. We need to up the war cry, the war drums, the rattling of sabers and the swinging of sabers. These people are all nuts, folks. Now, with regard to Finland and Sweden, there was some contention the other day, and I pointed out in the past and all along that there's a problem with Turkey. Turkey is a massive wild card in this SHTF scenario. Right? I see them as the potential Benedict Arnold, right? By switching sides from NATO and the United States of America over to Russia, if it suits them. Now, while all this is happening, everyone seems to have forgotten about China. You know, China. Everyone seems to have forgotten about China and Taiwan. I haven't. Still, Turkey wants F-35 jets through its NATO alliance partnership. NATO is the second largest military force in all of NATO. Kind of weird. You would think European nations might want to, man up, gird up their loins, act ye like men. Instead, they're kind of, not quite so much there. So Turkey, who is a NATO member, the president there, Erdogan, has confirmed that he is absolutely blocking Finland and Sweden from joining NATO. And he wants concessions first, right? He wants to be taken off of the sanctions list. He wants some F-35s. And he wants to be left alone regarding his vast purchase of the Russian S-400 missile and radar systems. It's not just a hollow threat, folks. Here's the translation from Reuters. It said, quote, this is of Turkey, "We will continue our policy in a determined way. We have told allies that we will say no to Finland and Sweden's NATO membership." Now, where do I see this going? I can tell you where I see this going. I see the United States, NATO, the European Union, and the United Kingdom saying, no, no, no. We want Sweden and Finland, especially Finland. We want them, right, to be NATO countries. It's going to piss off Erdogan, and he just might, folks, he just might switch sides. You see, Russia did its thing in Ukraine, and for weeks and weeks, China was pretty quiet. And this, folks, is all World War III buildup, by the way. It's all World War III buildup. Every little bit of this. China was quiet. Lips were zipped. And then they started saying, no, 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 no. We're not going to sanction Russia. We're not going to kick them out of the G6, G7, or whatever G thing they had going. We're not going to kick them out of the United Nations, and we're not going to kick them off of, incredible, the Security Council, the UN Security Council. That's right, folks. There's just a few nations on the UN Security Council. US, England, France, Russia, and China. Amazing, huh? So, yeah. So China kind of went from being neutral to, no, no, we are now allies, strong allies, the strongest allies we've ever been, Russia and China. They've chosen sides. India, a lot of the Middle East, Brazil, South Africa. That's right, the BRICS nations, and that alliance is growing. They could have Turkey become a part of it. I'm no fan of Turkey, folks. I am no fan. Well, the only time I like turkey is during Thanksgiving. Other than that, turkey, nah, not so much. We have a lot of false flag. We have a lot of wrangling to go on. Turkey does have a whole lot more in common with Russia than they do with Europe. They do. They have a whole lot more in common with China than they do with Europe. But I just think Turkey is just a nasty country any way you slice it. Any way you slice it. All right. Let us move on, folks. I want to get into heavier. What is going on in Ukraine with this war? And it is, folks, big time World War III stuff. Russia. Oh, by the way, you guys are going to get the second half of the hour, right? We start at the top and it's You guys get the first half. I'm sorry, I get the first half. You guys get the second half. Get your questions in to Jolene. Get them in there. Appreciate all that you do, all that you're doing, folks. Now, Russia is stepping up their efforts. They're now deploying an armored fighting vehicle designed for urban combat as it prepares for an assault on Donbass City. You know what this vehicle is called? The Terminator. Pretty smart, pretty nasty sounding. I would hate to be standing in a column of infantrymen and hear that the Terminators are coming. That would suck. I would not be happy about that. That would not give me an erection. That would suck. Wow, folks. So Russia's deploying some new equipment. They're stepping up what is happening. What do you think that means? Right? What do you think that means? It means Ukraine is about to take a really big one. And this also kind of piled in. We heard the number. Well, you know, the Ukraine military at the Azovstal plant, the steel plant in Ukraine there, they stopped their campaign. No. They were captured. And the numbers we got were, you know, it's a few hundred fighters. No, it's actually much more than that. It's an ongoing surrender, and it's far, far larger than the military or political leadership in Kiev has acknowledged. Right? I know too many people. I've known too many people. I'm hearing from too many people that all we're getting is lies out of our media and our government and our military. Not the military on the ground, not the guys like you and me, but rather the brass asses in the Pentagon, right? So this call for immediate ceasefire by Western leadership, which is a joke, was that they knew this was coming. They knew that surrender at Azovstal was imminent. They knew the Russians had won, and they wanted to try and have a soundbite, a news clip, a headline that showed that they brokered a ceasefire. Well, they didn't broker a ceasefire, right? That was a joke. Russia is saying they're up to and over 1,700 prisoners of war that have been captured at the Ukraine steel plant, folks. Not 300, 1,700 and climbing, right? But Zelensky has to maintain his lies and deny reality so he can beg and guilt Western nations, right? Statements from early in the week by Ukraine officials, including President Voldemort, attempted to downplay this surrender, if you remember, avoiding that word and instead saying it was an end to the combat mission and the Azov fighters were evacuated. And did not tell us how many. 1,700 people were holed up inside this steel plant, taking fire, taking shells. I got to hand it to them. They held out for quite a while. My best guess is they thought they were going to be executed on the spot by Russian troops. My best guess was they're scared to death of terrible Ivan. And I'll tell you why, folks, because that's what happens when you're getting your ass kicked. You fear the absolute worst. See, propaganda doesn't only work on the people. Propaganda has an effect on troops. It does. Propaganda has an effect on troops. It has an effect on everybody. For example, as the Marines were being transported from atoll to island all the way up to Japan in World War II, their reputation preceded them. As people were getting their ass kicked, the Japanese, and they were retreating back to island, they would report what was happening. And by time those reports made it back to the Japanese mainland, the American GIs, the Marines, were made to sound like hellish, bloodthirsty, murderous Viking giants, which is not what they really were, right? They're Marines. They're doing their job. But they weren't murderous. They weren't the people that they were proclaimed to be, but they had the people scared. And trust me, the military, hearing about that as they came, the Japanese military fought like hell. You know, battles from Guadalcanal all the way up to Iwo Jima can attest to that. You know, they were dug in like ticks. I mean, Iwo Jima, in order to defeat the Japanese, they bombed, I think, every living bush and tree off of that island, literally. It's a freaking rock. And the Japanese were dug into tunnels and lava tubes, and they weren't coming out. And I think, one, they were very hardcore troops. Number two, I think they were afraid. I think they were so afraid of what was going to be done to them if they were captured that they didn't want to come out. And I believe it was up to 40 years later, Japanese soldiers hid in the jungles of islands in the Pacific for fear of coming out and finding the Americans or some other country that was just going to treat them poorly. It's incredible what war does to the mind. And I think the longer these Azov fighters were holed up, the more shell-shocked they became until they finally had no choice but to surrender. And hopefully, and I don't know for certain because I'm not over there, hopefully the Russians are doing as they say, which is that they're treating the captured prisoners of war, treating them according to the Geneva Convention, housing them, feeding them properly, treating them properly, and attending to the wounded properly, which is what the Russians are claiming they're doing. So I guess we'll find out, huh? Unbelievable. We've got so much going on. So much coming on. Let's go over to monkeypox. Monkeypox, folks. And I'm not talking about George W. Bush, ex-president, with his brutal Freudian slip. I'm not talking about that monkey business, but we may as well cover that one real quick. Right, here's his quote for the day. The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Iraq. I mean, Ukraine. He was trying to attack Putin, but then pointed to his own actions in Iraq. Oh my gosh, what a screw up. You know, it's an embarrassment. Unbelievable. You know, and speaking of embarrassment and more screwy, wacky Democrat stuff, I'm going to go back over here and be sure and get your questions in, right? Democrats, folks. Democrats. There was a witness. This has to do with abortion, right? A witness tells lawmakers that men can get pregnant and have abortions. Yeah, unhinged, deranged, libtarded, and wholly unbelievably stupid, folks. Now, female pro-abortionists are claiming that men can have a say, I guess, right? Men can legitimately claim to have a vagina, a womb, and become pregnant, so they can now talk about abortion and even make laws about them. I mean, so that means that all men can, whether we are still biologically men or pretending to be women, you know, called identifying as, or medically transitioning, or just being a ridiculous fool, we can talk about, debate, and then vote on, for, or against abortion, I guess. So we are all equal again. No special protected status for having a vagina. And by the way, this abortion crap is coming up now. It's coming up now, and it's another distraction from far greater problems being visited on the world. Right? This could have been an issue last year or 3 years ago before Cerveza-Bug, or could have waited another 5 years. Not that I want it to wait, but now is when it comes to a head. Now is when it becomes a problem. Now is when the Supreme Court says, let's do this now before the 2022 elections. Right? The last election was so heavily contested, so much fighting going on, that the liberal left, including the now president and vice president, encouraged all the violence that was going on, along with the Democrat governors and mayors of cities that burned to the tune of billions of dollars. So they want a repeat of that 2 stinking years later. There are no coincidences, folks. Not a coincidence. Now back to the monkeypox. The first U.S. case showed up in Massachusetts. It's been confirmed, folks. Monkeypox. Now, what is monkeypox? Well, you know, it's kind of interesting. Do you remember several months ago, a truckload of monkeys being driven from one area to another from the CDC and their testing facilities, and the truck crashed and monkeys went flying everywhere, and someone got bit by a monkey and monkeys escaped. And now, Curious George wonders. Not Curious George W. Bush. I don't know what that guy's curious about. But let's look at what's going on. Monkeypox is supposed to be contained in England, the UK. And they're saying, well, you know, you can't just get monkeypox like a cold. It's not like chickenpox or something like that. Even though the symptoms are similar, you feel like shit. You can get, you know, blisters and lesions on the skin. But apparently they're trying to say it's passed from one homosexual to another. Right? That seems to be the method of transmission. As if I needed one more reason not to be that. Monkeypox. And they're also saying, well, you know, we don't think it's not that big of a threat. It's not that deadly. Yeah, I think we figured that out lately, that everything that comes along isn't going to kill us. Right? Everything that comes along isn't going to just kill us. Wow. Unbelievable. Now, you know, where do we go here? There's the new White House spokeswoman, spokesthing, whatever the hell she is. They got rid of Raggedy Ann, the red-headed commie. She's gone. She's going to NBC or one of their affiliates, MSNBC or CNBC or BFNBC. She's going somewhere. And hopefully she just loses her job, kind of like Chris Wallace does. Actually, no, Chris Wallace, lying scumbag jerk off. His CNN Plus app failed, and so now he's getting like a time slot at like 4:30 a.m. allegedly Sunday morning. They're going to give him a job. He's in, a little bit of news anchor work and cleaning the bathrooms. Anyways, we now have Jean-Pierre. She claims to be the first in 3 different ways. She's the first, I don't know, whatever. She's an idiot. Peter Doocy went after her, though, and put her in a position where she could be nothing more than looking like an idiot. Karine Jean-Pierre, she's the new White House liar spokesman, said that the Department of Homeland Security's Disinformation Governance Board, their Ministry of Truth, was halted. The program was halted because it had been, get this, the Disinformation Governance Board had been mischaracterized. This has everything to do with censorship, everything. They were mischaracterized. You mean Nina Jankowicz, who has since resigned, right? Who's been wrong about everything that she's spoken about. In other words, she has lied and been full of misinformation, disinformation. Had a public meeting on Zoom that was recorded where they discussed how she's going to need the power. The Disinformation Governance Board is going to need the power to go in and change people's tweets and texts and messages to avoid misinformation. Well, Jean-Pierre, right? Karine Jean-Pierre, she said that's a mischaracterization. And so they've just pulled the whole program, which I think is a plus. But it will be back, folks. But Doocy followed up with this gem of a statement / question. He said, so if it's pausing, if the Disinformation Governance Board is pausing because you think that board was mischaracterized, then the Disinformation Board is being shut down because of disinformation? Is that what's happening here? Totally, folks. Totally schooled her, intellectually trolled her, intelligently exposed the stupidity of the White House, the mainstream media, and other leftist organizations. Folks, this is how we can continue to win. The same thing we do here. We talk about subjects and use satire, right? This isn't absolute. This is satire, right? And if we didn't laugh just a little bit, we might just break down in tears over how stupid these people are. Literally stupid, but they're in charge, folks, of the United States government. They're not in charge of the 50 states. They're not in charge of me and you as human beings. They're in charge of this structure called the government. And that, I mean, when you really think about what is government, it's some buildings that have people that go to work in them. The only reason anyone thinks the government is of any significance is because they're willing to obey it. The moment you stop obeying a government is the moment it loses its power over you. And the best it can do is send somebody else who is given power over them and try and change your mind with a gun. That's the best they can do. They have no real power unless someone else is willing to be their dirty little slave. And speaking of trolling, Peter Doocy has just been an A+ troll master, showing their hypocrisy and stupidity, because you can't have it both ways. You really can't, folks. Well, another one who's done a great job is Elon Musk. Elon Musk. He's trolled them and caused them to out themselves, to expose their own fraud, right? He tweets that he knew Twitter was fudging its numbers and lying about it before he offered to purchase them. What does that mean, folks? He's saying that he knew all along that they're full of shit, that they're lying, that they're committing Security and Exchange Commission fraud, right? Fraud. Because they knew that they didn't have that many users, that many followers. So they got Security and Exchange Commission fraud. because investors thought that company was much more popular and much more valuable. So he got them to agree, and they had no choice because his buyout number was so much higher than its value that to not accept his offer meant that the board would have had to have committed a crime, another SEC crime, by not doing what was best for the shareholders, the stockholders. So he forced them by offering way too much money into accepting his offer and going into the nitty-gritties. The nitty-gritties being, well, now let's look at your books. Let's look at your numbers. And lo and behold, yeah, they started trying to shoo off some bots and some spam accounts, right? Left-wing lunatics were complaining, hey, I just lost 5,000. I just lost 10,000 of my people, right? Yeah. Turns out, right, the president of the United States has half, 50% of his accounts that follow him are bots and spam. Supposed users. You know, Twitter was claiming 5%. Musk is saying, no, those numbers are much higher, and you've been lying about them. So not only did they defraud, right? Not only did they defraud investors, they defrauded advertisers, folks, advertisers. And Musk said he knew it, and he's enjoyed, folks, I'm sure, every second of the way fooling these idiots. You got to laugh. Really, you got to. And I want to thank everybody for supporting us here on Patreon. If you're on YouTube, come over to patreon.com. Search for The Prepared Mind and then sign up for The Prepared Mind. It's a very simple process. It's a very similar setup to YouTube, and you can join us on the daily basis to get into what we're doing next, which is the Q&A. Sorry about that. We're going to do the Q&A, question and answer. Let's get to it.
Are you ready?
Alrighty, we're back. Jolene is in the house. And oh, by the way, when you guys go up to the, up here, right, to the PayPal donation button, it still works. But PayPal apparently is working with me to work some kinks out on the Prepared Mind account. Apparently, they don't like the way I had it set up. Apparently, they're a little confused. And so rather than just sending me a couple of emails and asking questions, they decided to suspend my account. Yeah, that's how that works. When your customer, right, doesn't do what you want, you suspend them. That's like sanctioning. Boy, I think we've seen that one before. That's right. Let's just sanction everybody. That seems to solve the most problems. No, it doesn't. All right. Jolene, who do we have up first? We got Opie Waddell. And he says, stump you, John. Uh-oh. You guys know what that means. There's this game we play. It's called One Truth, One Lie, or Stump the John. See if you can trick me. It's a fun little game. All right, he says, 1, there is a marsupial in the United States. Misspelled all the time. Plays dead and hangs by his tail. Number 2, they are playing possum about the right to protest peacefully. What he's speaking of, this marsupial. And Australia is famous for its marsupials. The most famous which is the kangaroo. But I think they have other marsupials as well. They got some weird stuff down there. They got the koala bear, which isn't a bear. They got the duck-billed platypus, which is not a duck. And I don't know if it's a platypus either, but that's what they call it. Anyways. The opossum in America is colloquially called the possum, right? It's misspelled all the time, mispronounced. It does play dead, and it can hang by its tail. The possum. In fact, you know what? I saw one, I think like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, crossing the road late at night. I thought, hey, that's a possum. But here's 2. They are playing possum about the right to protest peacefully. They're playing dead because that's what possums play. They're playing dead about the right to protest. I'll tell you what, Opie. I don't know about playing possum, but they certainly are lying about it, because the lying left allows the radical, violent idea called Antifa and BLM, Marxists by admission, communists by admission. They allow them to violently protest, and then they call it mostly peaceful. That means people are as good as dead if they run into them, right? They're playing possum, right, about the right to protest peacefully. There is no right to protest peacefully, and I have to say this, folks. You have a right to self-preservation. You have a right to life, liberty. There's a right to property. It's called property rights, to own your property. You have a right to protect your property. What those specific rights are for your state and city, you need to check into. Now, that is where I can't help you, because there's too many different little pieces of minutia. But you do have basic rights. And your right to protect yourself and your family and others exceeds the right of someone else to peacefully protest you in the head with a baseball bat, or peacefully throw a Molotov cocktail at your house. Right? It's pretty crazy stuff anyways. I love playing Stump the John. It's a great game. And thank you, Opie Waddell, for bringing your sense of humor to bear on that very topic. Yeah, the protests are coming, folks. The burn it to the ground, that's peaceful protest. They're right. They don't have that right, but they claim, right? Let's see, who is another peaceful protester? Oh, the mayor of Chicago. Lori Beetlejuice Lightfoot says, take up arms because they're coming after gays next. How ridiculous is that? Wow. Okay. Let's see what else we got going on. We got James Nicholson. Folks, it's not too late. If you want, get your questions in. I'll stay here as long as it takes to answer them. This is what James says. He says, John. That's the question mark. Yeah, it's not Jim today. And Roger's having a timeout. John, is there an update to the definition of racism, and what might be your opinion? Well, racism, the word, is so overused, so overplayed, so it's applied to everything and anything in order to try and evoke fear, loathing, hatred, terror from people around who are watching, and to instantly vilify the person called a racist, or who is being using racism. That's used to vilify them. It's an ad hominem attack. It's baseless. It has no bearing on the subject. It's just designed to destroy the person right away. Racist. That's racism. They changed the definition. Everything is racist now. So racism by default. The inverse has no definition. You see, racism must have no definition because nothing can be applied, or can be applied to any situation. Right? So it's a catch-all now for, I'm losing the argument, I'm liberal, and I need to make this person look bad. Doesn't work anymore. It's lost its effect. Now, when I grew up, and since I'm an old guy at 52 years old, as an old guy, I remember racism being the belief that one's race, either a race somewhere or your own race, depending on whether you were one of them or not, that your race is superior to the other. That's what racism was. And that in order to guarantee the survival of the fittest, if you will, that you had to keep the other races down or kill them, right? That was what racism was. Now racism is anything. You know, racism is just noting that someone is of another race. It's racist of me to try and speak about racism because clearly I have way too little melatonin. No, wait, melatonin helps you sleep. Melanin, right? I'm a person of color, but I don't have enough color to count. So you're a racist. That's really all it is. The definition of racism is destroyed. There's no way to define it anymore. right? To commit a crime based on racism is considered a hate crime. Well, who gets to make that determination? Is there a legal definition? Even the legal definitions, as far as I'm concerned, are too ambiguous and vague to be applicable. And certainly, I think the use of the term hate crime, it probably violates the Constitution in and of itself, because it violates free speech and free thought. You should be able to, and I am no advocate of racism, folks. I think it's stupid. I really do. But if you want to have racist thoughts, go right ahead. Go waste your frickin' time thinking that because you're white, you're superior, or black, you're superior, or brown, superior, or Asian, or Aboriginal, or whatever, right? I don't care. You're wasting your time. You're going to spin yourself in circles. You're just going to get mad at everyone else, and you'll never succeed in developing as a human, or spiritually, or however you want to think of our personal mission here on earth. Be an idiot. Go right ahead. But it is when you act on that racism that you violate other people's rights, right? Because you damage them, either their reputation by making up lies about them. To call someone a racist who is not, I think is a slander. And I don't think it should be allowed without punishment. I think it's ridiculous, because cancel culture is destroying people's lives because others don't agree with them. Now, back to, if someone wants to be a racist, fine. It is when you act on it that's wrong. That's where I have a problem with this whole thing, right? Because I have been treated poorly, folks, by members of other races. And frankly, I don't dwell on it and give a shit. I can recall the instances, but I don't care. I have been treated very well by people of other races. And it demonstrated to me that not everyone thinks the same. So it's quite an interesting thing, right? I have just wonderful interactions with humans of all persuasions. Well, almost all, right? Haven't run into too many Antarcticans lately. I tell you, James, anyways, I appreciate the question and the topic, but this is a divisive issue. And the last thing I want to cover with this is the divisiveness of using race as a wedge issue, right? In order to pit people against each other, you use division to separate them, right? You got to separate people. You got to keep them separated. You've got to keep them separated. And then you've got to have them accuse one another of various, everything from the informal lie to a standard accusation of blame and guilt, to just outright falsities that are right, beyond rude. The objective is to keep them fighting each other. So race does that, because it's one of those things that we can see there's a clear difference between us. It's oftentimes hard to see a liberal when you're a conservative. The way they dress. Now it might be just someone who's kind of bummy, or it could be a hippie, left-wing radical dumbass. Now we have other things that help us identify them, like masks. They're still wearing masks like idiots down here in the South. They get a certain expression on their face. Having a Biden bumper sticker on your Subaru, that tends to give you away as a liberal idiot. But, there comes a time, though. See, I don't see other races as my enemy. I do see my enemy as my enemy, and my enemy is someone who wants me and you, anyone who's patriotic, pro-America, flag-waving, apple pie eating, Constitution quoting Americans. They're our enemy because they want to destroy us. Now, we will let them live. We don't hunt down communists. No, the same way we don't hunt down people of other races and do mean things to them. That's in the past. The racism doesn't seem to exist the way they want it to, so they're just calling everything racism. And that really is quite interesting to me, that in order for racism to continue to be a problem and to be used as a divisive technique, they have to lie about what it is and who is or isn't racist. In other words, I think racism is a smaller problem, not a larger one, and that it's fabricated and is being used as a tool, a wedge, to get people to hate each other. Unbelievable, folks. So, who is next? Jolene. We're sitting here in beautiful Studio B at the Prepared Mind Network. And I'm again taking a shot, contacted. Thank you again, Mr. T, for letting me know that there's a potential opening at a radio broadcast network. We're always trying to expand here, folks, expand our reach and our influence. And I tell you, you guys are a huge part of that. The more of you that sign up for Patreon, the more of you that share the message, thumbs up, right, that hit the notification bell so you get notified. Everyone that does that makes our message all the more powerful. All right, we got Opie Waddell back in here. And he says, John, DTM paint works well to recoat your shipping containers as they start to rust. I also recommend closed cell foam inside doubles as a home. Add a portable air conditioner, dehumidifier. This sounds like a discussion about bunkers. When I was in Northern California, I thought, I need to do this RMZ thing. I need to find a different way to live. I need to do some really neat stuff. And I considered doing a geodesic dome. They have a metal frame dome that you wrap in plastic. I was thinking of coating that with closed cell insulation for insulatory purposes, and then to disguise it as terrain. Just cover it in 3 or 4 feet of, foaminess. And that would be a well-insulated, interesting home, small home, right? Bunker style. I thought about taking a shipping container and doing the same thing, digging a very large hole and then surrounding it with, 3 or 4 feet of the foam so that it would protect it from being crushed, and then bury it. But currently, as you guys know, I've got the Quonset hut looking bunker. And that's because the arch is one of the strongest shapes in the geometric world, right? It distributes the weight and spreads it out and carries it down to the bottom. Anyways, that's why, conduits, the pipes that go under roads, they're these preformed steel conduit, very strong, made to be directly buried and can handle huge loads. They make excellent things. But the shipping containers, they were very cheap for a long time. And then people found utility in them and started using them and doing exactly as is suggested, and that is using them as homes. Architects began building and designing not just single family homes, but multiple family, multiple story residences, like apartment buildings out of stacked shipping containers. Pretty interesting stuff, right? What they're trying to do. Now we've got a whole nother world though. We've had Cerveza bug. We got the start of World War III. Shit has hit the fan. And the shipping industry is toast. The trucking industry, they're trying to murder. In fact, I listened to a chief executive. I can't remember which particular one. And Uman sent this out this morning. It was testimony. And he was saying that Pilot, he worked for Pilot, which is kind of like Love's Pilot. It's a huge truck stop corporation that has truck stops throughout the country. Every 20 to 50 miles or so, they have one of these truck stops. And they sell tremendous amounts of diesel fuel. And he was saying, you guys are manufacturing, creating this problem, this trucking problem. So yeah, no more shipping container. We're done with that section, Jolene. But this Pilot CFO or chief officer, executive officer, he was saying that they were told to cut by the railroads, cut the amount of product they're shipping. And they sell diesel fuel, right? Trucking. And then they were told to cut whatever was left by another 50%. And he said, we represent 20% of diesel fuel sales to truckers throughout the country. 20%. That's incredible. And they wanted to cut their fuel supplies, folks, by more than half. How does that make a lick of sense? How is the railroad company, why did they get to tell someone you have to cut your fuel? Why does that help? How does that help? Well, I'm going to tell this little story here, and you're going to enjoy this. It's the Wayback Machine. It's the SHTF Prepared Mind History Hour. Back in the 1800s, there's this man named John D. Rockefeller, started Standard Oil. And at the same time, there were these other incredibly powerful men that were alive, like Dale Carnegie. and J.P. Morgan, John Pierpont Morgan, who owned the railroads. And what they decided to do was form a cartel, if you will. A bunch of insiders. They were monopolists. They wanted to control everything for themselves. And so the railroad would give Rockefeller rebates, and not in the way we think of rebates now, but a discount. So he could use the rail lines at a very cheap discount. And other oil companies could not. They had to pay full price. And that allowed Rockefeller to sell his oil, right? Standard oil, much cheaper than everyone else. It gave him an unfair competitive advantage. The steel companies all played this game. Everyone played this game in order to drive the other companies out of business and to screw over the American consumer. Because once they got rid of their competitors, they could raise the price to whatever they wanted to, right? And so if you were not a good buddy of John P. Morgan, your customers had to pay more because your products cost a lot more to be shipped. And that's where the term railroaded came from. Because if you want to play, you're going to have to pay, and you got no choice. You're screwed over. So that's what the railroads are doing again. They're doing it to Pilot. And Pilot, in turn, has to pass those higher expense fuels onto their consumers, the truckers. And the truckers themselves are shippers. They're shipping products or trucking products. And so they pass their higher cost of doing business onto the consumer. Ultimately, you and me. So once again, the consumers are getting railroaded. We're getting screwed over. Looks like we have two prepared mothers in the show. What do we got here? What is going on? Okay, there we go. That was interesting. And we still have two prepared mothers, but no one needs to be on here until we know what the hell is going on. We may have been hacked, folks. Oh my gosh. Unbelievable. We're being railroaded and screwed. In fact, they're continuing to railroad people around the world. Are you aware that there are massive protests going on, folks, in Iran? Massive protests. Massive protests in Pakistan. Massive protests, violence, riots, looting, crazy shit going on in Sri Lanka. And they're spreading, folks, because of inflation. Now, once again, I want to describe everything so that we can see where we're at in history. There's superpowers, first world nations, and then there's emerging market economies, and then there's third world shitholes. So the United States is a superpower. China, superpower. Europe, the European Union, superpower. So we have the highest standard of living, right? We have the most access to food and desirable goods and services. Emerging markets are Brazil, India, and other nations that are producing a lot of goods, a lot of quality. They're stepping up their game. They're producing electricity, making fuel, transportation available to their people. Their standard of living is coming up. That's an emerging market. And then you've got third world shitholes. Countries that have very little in the way of GDP, gross domestic product, very little wealth. They're typically run by really crappy, corrupt scumbags like Voldemort Zelensky. Yes, folks, Ukraine is not an emerging market economy, though it could be all by itself. It's a powerful country. But it's been run into the ground by a bunch of corrupt dumbasses. Anyways, so these countries that are third world, they're the ones who are suffering hardest and first. Right? We saw Venezuela years ago just tumble all the way down because they were sanctioned into punishment. But countries like Sri Lanka and Iran, well, Iran is sanctioned. Sri Lanka has limited resources and size, and so they're considered third world. They may have cities, folks, but they're third world. The people live very poorly. And so when times get tough, when we start to enter a recession here in the US or Europe, the poorest people among us are the ones who suffer. And the poorest countries, they suffer greatly across the board. You know, they're having just huge problems. Oregon Patriot steps in. He says, my comment for today, if you haven't already, get a garden going. I'm already eating radishes, spinach, and lettuce. Sugar peas aren't far away. Invest in your security. I like this. Thank you very much, Oregon Patriot. And don't forget, you can grow year-round in your house sprouts. Right? Once again, Crispy Bacon on the Crispy Bacon channel, he got into growing sprouts, and he was really shocked. He's like, this is amazing. You can grow a salad a day in a mayonnaise jar. Right? Every 5 days from the time you start your seeds, it's 5 days away. Now, other vegetables like radishes and carrots, sugar peas or snap peas, and other veggies, they can take anywhere from 6 weeks to 12 weeks to go from seed to produce, but it can be done. Lettuces as well. I highly recommend it, folks. Get into gardening. It's a nice hobby. It creates food, and very nutritious food at that. Very good. We got Heidi checking in. She said, John, I saw an ad that talked about applying for a pardon for a person's debt. What the heck is that about? I don't know. There's so many crazy fake ads, Heidi. I remember when Obama was president. Obama has a new education thing. You can lower your taxes and get your degree and lower your house mortgage payment and lower this and that. To me, a lot of these advertisements I see are kind of misnomers or non sequiturs. What they're advertising truly isn't what you get. Now, I know that you can ask for debt forgiveness. You can ask. I don't know about programs or government programs. I know they're wanting to do student loan forgiveness. That's a continuing issue within the Democrat Party to try and buy voters. Imagine yourself being a young student, a young graduate, or a young non-graduate and $100,000 in debt, or $150,000, or $200,000 in student loan debt. Imagine a president or a Congress that says, oh, you don't have to pay that back. You're totally forgiven. You're going to think that political party has your best interest in mind. But don't forget that whoever loaned that money, they're out. Now, I'll tell you what, schools can give a scholarship that is a free or discounted tuition. Right? Schools can do that. But for the most part, folks, student loans come through private companies or the government. In other words, someone's on the hook for that debt. Now, if I loan money to someone, I don't want them to just say, hey, let's forget about it. It's cool. Be like, no, that was my money that I loaned you, and you're going to pay it back. Well, these people want out of debt. They've spent a bunch of money in college, and they want out. So, yeah, this idea of loan forgiveness and debt forgiveness is continuing to be something that is on the minds of people, especially as we go deeper into this recession. Especially, as times become harder. They're just like, just let me out of it. I promise I'll be good. I'll never do it again. Here we go. Latin American Preparedness is back. He says, everyone has noticed the increased gas prices under Biden. Gas pumps are beginning to be programmed for gas to surpass $10 a gallon. Evidently, gas prices are going to have a huge increase. Thoughts? I'm glad we're wrapping this episode of The Prepared Mind up with this topic. I saw this today. Gas pumps are having to be changed to handle $10 plus gas. Well, I guess if they have a digital readout, it's a little easier. But if you remember when gas pumps had the old analog rolling numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, and then start again. And, it was interesting. That was the old way. Then they went to these digital pumps. Well, things are a little different now, right? If you look at the gas pump down low or below the part where you actually pay, it has like 3 positions or 4 positions. You're going to pay $4, 4.159. Why don't they just say 4.16? Really, at this stage of the game, 1/10 of a penny makes a freaking difference. Well, they're still playing that game, but in order to put the proper price on there, they need one more place, right? You need something in the 10th place. And the reason this is so interesting is it's going to cost them a lot of money. Number two, we predicted $10 a gallon gas. I think I said by the end of this year, we could see it. Certainly by the end of the Biden administration in 2024. And by the end of the administration, I mean by the election. But what could cause the price to once again double from where it's at now? What could cause that? A massive tax increase? I don't know. How about World War III? How about nuclear bombs exploding in certain areas of the world? Maybe our cities with refineries. Who knows what could cause it? But certainly when that comes about, we're going to have some serious problems. When $10 a gallon gas becomes a reality, paying for it will be a problem. But the reason that we're paying $10 a gallon is going to be a bigger problem to worry about. Right? Alien invasion, $10 a gallon gas. Right? Whatever it's going to be, you'll be happy to get that gas at $10 a gallon. Trust me, folks. If it has to go to $10 a gallon, that means something very big, very painful, very SHTF will have happened. Right? You would say, well, in order for the government to lock us in our homes and make us stay here and shut down everything, it would have to be something really crazy, huh? Yeah, it turned out it was really crazy. Anytime they'd have to do something extreme, the reason for it has to be even more extreme. The whole world's gonna die. Yeah. It's amazing. Now I'm going to take you guys back. One last Wayback Machine move. Cerveza-bug. 2020. In the early stages. They're like, is this airborne or not? Well, no, it's not airborne. It can't be. Remember this whole question about whether a cold is airborne or not, or can be transmitted through close contact? Or do you have to be in a room with someone a long time and touch dirty objects that they've touched? They're like, oh, it can only be transmitted if you're very close to someone and you touch stuff that they touch, kind of like the monkeypox thing. And then someone suggested, no, you can cough and it can infect others. And everyone freaked out. Oh my God, this thing's so deadly. Cerveza-bug, which it's not. That it's so deadly that if you're in the room with someone else, you could die. The airborne transmissibility question came up. Everyone freaked out and lost their minds and got scared to death. And they denied it. And then they started saying, well, you got to wear masks because, it captures the bad stuff. I thought it doesn't transmit by that. See, everything has to be raised to this level of hysteria in order to justify the next action they take, to take a right from you, to charge you another huge tax, to raise the price of something, to turn you away and say your rights don't matter. All of these things, folks, are SHTF in nature. What's next? A lot more, of course. Chance favors the prepared mind. I hope you are prepared. Go to thepreparedmind.club. We still have stuff available. Go there and shop away. Check things out. Compare prices. Just no matter what, most importantly of all, get prepared. And I do recommend 6 months of food. 6 because 3 for yourself and your family and some more to help others. And I also recommend buying a couple cases of lutefisk, which is a disgusting treat that comes from Norway, or Sweden, or both. Lutefisk, right? And anytime someone comes to your house and says, hey, John, man, I need some food. I know you got some. I'll hand them a couple cans of lutefisk. And go, man, that's what I got. I'm down to lutefisk, man. Enjoy. I guarantee they'll never come back to your house again after getting one bite of what lutefisk is. Nothing quite like fish preserved in salty, alkaloid, briny shit. Nasty stuff. Anyways, gotta love it, folks. Chance favors the prepared mind. Is yours. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday. We'll do our morning videos, and then we will do, folks, we will line up and do the free for all, Friday free for all. I'll see you then. God bless America. Semper Fi.